All right, today's the day I get to switch out the stock exhaust system. So the front header and the rear, which you can't see, downpipe, and the crossover pipe will all be replaced. So I'm going to go through that process. These are Speed Daddy headers, and I went ahead and purchased these clamps here. Those are better than what they sent. Yeah, I won't use these. Maybe I'll shackle somebody up with them, I don't know. They're not good for headers. So, yeah, these were the ones I was talking about in my last video for around 200 bucks. And that's about what it costs, including the clamps and shipping was about $200 for a nice set of headers. So it's a 3-inch downpipe, and the U-bend is actually kind of shallow. I've seen some of these headers where it's worse than the stock. The flanges, pretty heavy duty. I also did a silicone ceramic coating inside and out on those headers because there's pieces in the flange, can't see it real well, but where it was welded together, you know, there's gaps in there where rust will happen, and then rust turns into corrosion, and that turns into holes. So to eliminate that ahead of time, I went ahead and coated these inside and out. I also heat treated them in my giant oven. Did the cycles, heating it up for 30 minutes at 250 degrees, and then 30 minutes at 400 degrees, and then another 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, at about 600 degrees. So these have been fully heat cycled, and I made sure that these pieces fit together. It's very important that you test fit your headers before you start installing them on the car. It is not uncommon for them to need a pipe expander. So just keep that in mind. I've got the clamp sitting over the top of this one. But you can see these are splined so that you can put a hose clamp on there. Just make sure that you've test fit everything together before you start tearing your car apart and realize that you need to go down to AutoZone and get a pipe expander. Now I'm debating whether or not I'm going to use these gaskets or if I'm going to reuse the stock. It kind of depends on what they look like. I'll probably just use the new ones because if you have any experience with these cars, you don't want an exhaust leak in here. It's almost impossible to get to tighten the bolts. You have to tear a lot of things apart to get that engine in a position where you can reach the bolts. What I've also got here is exhaust system sealant, which will be basically put around any place where there's a coupler, any place where there's a possibility of leaking. I also got thread locker because I want to make sure those bolts, the exhaust bolts, don't back out inadvertently and create a leak. To be honest, I don't know how good that's going to do. It may just burn off and be worthless, but I'm not taking a chance. And then, of course, ultra copper. This is going to be used where the gaskets, just a super thin layer. I've read a lot of back and forth. Don't use gaskets. Only use RTV. Don't use RTV. Just use the gaskets. So, in my experience, I put a small amount of RTV just to hold the gasket in place and take up any imperfections that might be on the head. These are straight. I checked them with a ruler, and these are flush. So there shouldn't be any sealing issues at all, you know, unless the heat treating has caused any warpage, but I rechecked them and there wasn't. So these were stainless steel. I got 2 of the 2 1/4 and 2 of the 3-inch couplers, and then of course there's this nice little flange gasket here, which holds this piece to this collector here where the flex is. Oh, one thing I want to mention, common issue with these headers is this starts to decay and rust right away. I saturated this with the silicone paint to make sure it's the same kind of paint you put on header wrap. So I soaked it and made sure that it got through to the underside, and I also coated the inside pretty well too, because that's a weak spot on these headers. So as I go along, you'll get pictures, and I'll share a video of what the sound is. You've got the sound prior to the headers on my last videos. Now we'll see what it sounds like once I install the headers. And also we'll be checking the boost, because the boost is supposed to go down, less restriction in the exhaust system. So we'll see, we'll test that theory. And then also fuel economy, see if that has any bearing. I also got an app and one of those Bluetooth dongles for reading my car's system, the OBD2. And so far I'm pretty impressed. I'm using Car Scanner Pro for iPhone. Normally I would use Torque Pro, but they don't have that version for iPhone. So there's a lot of interesting readings I can get to test parameters to see if there's any issues, any problems. Make sure that I'm not running lean. You know, you reduce the restriction, it makes things move faster. But my ZZ Performance 1.0 PCM is actually, I had it designed and programmed for headers. So this was just one of those last steps that I needed to get done, and we'll get some progress reports. Thanks for watching.